Hi, welcome to the video. As you can tell by the title, if you're here because you've ever felt anxiety, if you're feeling a little bit hopeless and maybe wondering if you'll ever feel like yourself again, I personally have survived the most challenging year I've ever had, and I'm here to kind of explain very briefly what I went through, because I don't want this video to be about the symptoms and necessarily like my story or kind of what happened with me, but more what I've learned along the way. And basically the point of this video is to bring everything that I've learned and condense it into 10 minutes or so, and hopefully be of help to anyone going through something similar. So I've done various videos here on YouTube talking about and explaining my anxieties and how it's something I've dealt with since about the age of 5. And so I felt like the older I got, I felt like I learned how to manage my anxieties. And although at certain points in my life where things became more stressful or a new situation, typically it would elevate my anxiety. But I felt like I had a good grasp on it, and I felt like I really knew what it was. And honestly, I thought like I had overcome it to a sense because I was on top of it. So about 13 months ago, I started having these weird reactions, which at the time I thought were to food. Got all the tests. I got blood work. I got every allergy tested. At first, we thought it was a shellfish allergy. Anyway, everything came back negative, but I was feeling worse and worse. And typically in any anxiety situation that I've had in my life is something that eventually gets better. And so my anxiety subsides. And in this case, I felt like I was feeling worse and worse. And so my anxiety kept going in that trajectory, unfortunately. And it got to a point that I didn't know how to manage the anxiety. And at one point I felt so lost, and I didn't know if my symptoms were coming from the anxiety, if there were separate symptoms. And the more I went to conventional doctors, the more they told me that everything was fine. Yet I felt worse and worse. And that I do not wish on anyone. That is the most terrifying, awful, because how can I manage my anxiety symptoms when your body's telling you otherwise? Or at least that's what I was thinking in that moment. And so anxiety did not seem like what I had to manage. What I thought I constantly needed to be on was my health, and how do I fix it, and how do I heal, and how do I figure out what's going on. So without, again, giving you much like deep details on all the symptoms I had, because honestly to this day, I'm still not sure what came from what. But the part where I started to realize that it was becoming debilitating was not necessarily these like physical symptoms, but the anxiety was like keeping me from living a normal life, to the point I had to go into an emergency appointment because I couldn't function almost. That's how bad it got. And then with that heightened anxiety and having it for so many days and weeks and months on end, that then depression obviously creeped in, because how could it not? Because it's hard to have a positive thought or a positive outlook when you've been proven otherwise for the last really long time. And when you're not in a good space and not feeling well, that long time feels even more exaggerated. So I finally had not an epiphany, but I realized I'm so focused on the symptoms that maybe what if I focus on the mental health side, and how do I make myself at least less anxious? Could I then deal with the rest? And that was kind of my approach. So I started to try and do everything to kind of minimize stress, to minimize anxiety. I do have to preface, there's not one turning point. There's not one thing I did that completely turned everything around. I also have to stress that even right now, I don't necessarily feel like I'm 100% at my best, but I would say I'm a good 90% there. And could I have told myself this 6 months ago, that would have made my whole entire life. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't ever want to come off as like I have it all figured out, or do we ever? So anyway, if you're feeling that way, all I can extend is there is hope, and you will get better. And there are so many tools and so many things available to make you feel better. So everything I'm going to be talking about that I did, and again, this is what worked for me. And if you personally are in a space that you don't feel like you have the time to do these things, or you just feel like what you're feeling is too severe, again, I'm not a doctor, but go get medication and get the temporary or the immediate relief that you're needing, because that was a weird thing in my mind, and I couldn't decide whether, is it time for medication? Is it, am I weak? Is this something that I can figure out on my own? And so I feel like what I've learned from this and from what I've read now a couple of books on this, and basically the research and the medical advice that I've gathered is, if you're feeling way too overwhelmed and you can't deal with it on a day-to-day basis, you should do a sort of medication, whether it's something that's temporary, like a benzodiazepine, or a long-term SSRI type medication that you take daily, and it calms your nerves and your anxiety and boosts your mood at the same time. If that's needed, sometimes you might need it for a couple of months, sometimes for a couple of years. You can then slowly wean off, or this may be something that you realize you feel so much better on, and you end up taking this because this is what makes you feel good. I don't know why there's still a stigma with mental health, when if you have a heart issue, nobody would bat an eye if you were taking heart medication. Why in 2025 are we still having these weird stigmas when it comes to mental health? And I say this because even with my own judgment, it was hard to make a decision. And so that's why I'm bringing it up. Also, A, to destigmatize if you do need medication, and B, to also know that there is hope and that there are plenty of tools that you can do, some in the moment, some that are more, will take time, but you'll feel relief over time. But yeah, I'm going to go through everything that I have done that I feel like has made a massive, massive difference. So the first thing is breathwork. And breathwork can be, or for me, has 3 categories that I've been using it. So one category is immediate. Like if you start to feel your heart racing or whatever, you just start to feel that anxiety creep up. It's called box breathing. So you imagine 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds holding your breath, and then you can do 8 seconds of exhaling. So the actual act of counting and being present with the breath, that's very helpful because it takes your mind away from the thoughts that were creating the anxiety. And secondly, it actually does calm your heart rate down, and therefore physiologically you start to feel better, which then essentially kind of stops or dampens the anxiety. That's one that I use. This one can be done while driving. It can be done when you're about to fall asleep, anywhere, sitting, standing. You can do this while you're having a conversation with someone. This one I feel like is mild. It's not life-changing, but it's just nice knowing I have this thing that I can focus on right now, and it helps a good amount. The next one is more long-term, breath work. If you're familiar with Wim Hof's like breathing meditations. They're like about 10, 11 minutes long. And it's a series of like breathing rhythmically and then holding your breath for 1.5 minutes to then up to 2 minutes. When I first did it, I was like, there's no way I can do it. And by the second time, I was able to hold my breath for 1.5 minutes. So it also gives you this like boost of confidence, like, wow, like I was that calm that I was able to hold my breath that way. And then that controlling of being able to essentially hold your breath gives you this sense of control in other areas of your life, which I think is the antithesis of anxiety. So it just gives you this ultra confidence that you can manage your anxiety. And then the third breath work type that I love doing, and then this one takes much longer, but I also feel like it has a longer term like relieving effect. And I believe Paul, I don't remember his name, but he has these online breathwork classes. You can like, I think they're very affordable. I think like $20, and you can join virtually, do it from the comfort of your own home. He also does like retreats and stuff like that. My sister-in-law actually introduced me to this 2 years ago, and this is the first time I did it. It felt like I had done like 5 years of therapy in 1 hour, in a 1 hour session. So it's just cleansing. It'll bring up things that like you maybe didn't realize was upsetting you. So it's very good to figure out like maybe what is stemming this anxiety. Anyway, I think it's good because you feel so calm, but also your mood it's like a natural drug. Your mood is so improved after doing this. And it's the rhythmic breathing that literally turns off a part of the brain that's like critical and analytical. And you're just basically left for a good half hour in this like state of bliss. And when you're going through anxiety and you kind of just like need an escape and need a break, this is perfect for that. So highly recommend. And again, with everything that I'm mentioning, I will leave everything linked down below. I'm not great at remembering names of things in the moment, but I will have all that linked. Save this for yourself. Send it to a friend that you think this might be helpful for. The next suggestion I have is books that I have read that have helped tremendously. I'm a very visual learner, and somehow like I feel like reading a book is the best way to inject information into my brain, more than seeing someone physically speak, whether it's like on a screen or in person. There's something visual about the letters and me comprehending them, and like it's essentially like I'm receiving the knowledge two ways, whereas when I'm hearing someone, I can't learn something audibly by hearing. So I don't know if this is more so for me, but I do feel like reading about anxiety and learning about anxiety through a book to me has been like one of the best ways. So I've read 3 books that I feel like have made major impact. The first one is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This was the first book that I read kind of on this subject, and it was like the first time that I felt like I could extract myself from like anxiety or any horrible feeling. And it's honestly a tool that I feel like everyone should learn about and kind of have. I feel like if everyone read this book, the world would be a better place. Those are like strong things to say about a book, but I truly believe that. I also think Eckhart Tolle, we are so lucky to be living at the same time as him. I'll just say that. The next book I did, this isn't about anxiety. It's more about emotional baggage and managing that and kind of deciphering through. I tend to think of myself as a very emotionally intelligent person. It's hard for me to say that I'm intelligent in any other category, but I feel like in this area I do feel, I guess, highly about. But this book just takes it to another level. Have you ever like been upset at someone or with someone, or have a little sense of resentment and you almost like can't put your finger on why, or maybe you can and you can't get this feeling away? This book kind of helps you. It essentially teaches you the work. That's what they call it. And I don't remember if it's 5 or 7 questions. And it's basically questions to like ask yourself about the situation. And in any situation, you see the reality, or like you see the clarity in the situation, and you always see why it affects you, first of all, and also it gives you the power to essentially heal and fix the situation with you and your thoughts and your actions and your behavior alone, which I love. So much of our issues and problems with other people and in relationships, it's because we're wanting a different outcome from someone else. And that's so frustrating because obviously we don't have control of that. All we have control of is ourselves. And I think when we hear this, because I've heard this a million times, and I think we think, okay, well, I'll just suppress my emotion about this, and that's how I fix it. And that's so the wrong approach. And I actually realized that I was doing that in a lot of areas of my life, and then carrying small bits of like resentment in a lot of different categories, which when you're having anxiety, that's the last piece of baggage you want to have. Again, this isn't directly a book about anxiety, but I think it just helps heal old wounds. I mean, the great thing about this book too is it gives you so many examples in so many areas of life, from, childhood traumas, childhood abuse, whether it's sexually or verbal or physical. Like, there's just so many examples that I don't think you'll finish the book without they didn't touch on the area that like I'm feeling or so on. And I feel like for me, any doubts that I was having or any questioning that I was having as I was reading the book, somewhere in the book it got answered. So it's one of those type of books that I just feel like you get so much out of, and it's probably something that since I've read it, I think about kind of every day, and it comes up and it's more automatic now. So instead of having that thought about that person that maybe hurt me, I can easily do the work now in my head and ask myself those questions. And it's a lot easier to kind of snap out of that yucky feeling that you're feeling. And it just gives you control of the situation, which is always nice. And then lastly, this is a book that my therapist actually recommended. I'm actually still currently reading it. I haven't finished it, but I can attest already that it is an absolute must. And honestly, if you take one thing away from this video, it would probably be to read this book or gift it to someone that you know is maybe struggling and needs some help with anxiety, depression, phobias, OCD, anything like that. Basically, in this book, in the first chapter, it basically tells you that you can cure yourself of these things. Now, this book is written by a doctor, a physician that dealt with anxiety and like insane phobias for, I think, 41 years of his life. And it wasn't until he did this specific work that he then essentially created his own version with his knowledge and the course or the process that he went through. And there is work involved. It gives you kind of guidance on like what to do, how to think. Within even just the first chapter, I felt like my anxiety was relieved because it already gave you tools. So I love a book like that you don't have to like wait till chapter 28 to get something kind of useful or something practical right away. I felt like I walked away from that first chapter already with tools that could help and minimize anxiety that early in the book. I think another thing in this book that it offers is kind of insight to how other people feel anxiety and all the different ways it can manifest. But it's not in a scary way that you're like, oh my gosh, I've never felt that, so now am I going to feel that? It's actually, so far, I haven't read anything in the book that I haven't felt. And that's actually a very common thing that he talks about in the book, that typically if you are anxious, you've kind of felt all of these crazy range of symptoms. And just in reading that, it gives you comfort in knowing, wow, I've never even seen anyone talk about this. I've never seen anyone explain it so well. And then coming from a doctor, it simplifies everything and also makes you feel seen. And most of all, like you're not alone. And basically, that's kind of the whole point of this video. Even if I don't say anything that you find directly helpful, sometimes just knowing someone that you know or someone that you've been listening to on the internet for years that is going through something similar than you, sometimes that is so comforting. So if I can offer or inspire a little bit of hope, I've done my job. And then the last thing that I would say that is kind of similar to what I just talked about, but it's about kind of rebuilding trust again with my body. And that's a very personal process, probably would be different for everyone. I'm kind of feeling that had I done that part first, I feel like the healing would have gone a lot faster. But you know, that famous saying, like, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, or something along those lines. I felt like had I heard or gotten that advice in the beginning, I don't know that it would have resonated. I feel like I did have to go through all the steps that I did to get to where I'm at now. But I think that's kind of been my lesson learned in all of this, is just that trust in yourself. And myself, like many others, oftentimes we look for an external help, an external, this is going to be the thing that helps me. It's whatever, whether it's a pill, whether it's, I don't know, a person, then always just coming back and realizing that it's all within you. It's in your decisions to make the right decision for yourself. It's the power to change is within you. The power for mindset is within you. It was all there all along, and you are everything and you are enough. And again, not to make this super woo-woo, but that's been kind of my journey and my lesson in all of this. And again, yeah, I think in that first month of feeling this way, had I just had trust in my body and kind of released and let go, maybe I could have avoided a full year of discomfort. I don't know. Maybe I needed to go through this life lesson. But again, all worthwhile if this video makes a difference in any of your lives. And I do have to say that I've gained a new sense of self-confidence and self-love that maybe I had been lacking for many years. And I hope you find that, even if you're not going through a hard time, even if you're watching this and you're like, can't relate. But I think there's always, always, always more room for self-love and self-acceptance and true self-confidence. And I do feel like I've traveled through many dimensions and came back as a more whole person. And yeah, if you're feeling well already, I would suggest find ways to heal even what maybe you don't necessarily think needs healing, but do one thing a day that helps you find love within yourself a little bit more. And yeah, I guess that's my take on all of this. I hope this video was helpful. I hope this video finds you doing well and thriving. And I also feel like this year has been challenging for a lot of people that I know in different ways than it was for me. But I typically, after some time like this, I feel like comes a new renaissance, a new regrowth, a new evolution of positivity. And that's what I'm wishing you, not just in the next year, but starting now. I thank you for watching. If you're still here and you've been here from the beginning, I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.